Okay, good morning, everybody. We have a lot to get to, so I wanna jump in right away. The month of Cheshvan, we continue to learn Leilui Nishmas Bas Yefega Bas Yisrael, Leilui Nishmas Frida Smen Bas Yitzchak, Leilui Nishmas Meir Yitzchak Ben Yosef Eliyahu HaKohen, and for the Refuah Shlema of Hillel Tzvi Yehuda, and all of our Chayalim that need a Shmirah and protection. Ashreichem, the week is sponsored anonymously by a grateful family in our community. Today is sponsored by our dearest, precious friend Miriam Futterman in memory of Miriam's cousin, Evan Friedel Bat Avraham ben Miriam. So we began this journey last week, 2 weeks ago. It's thrilling. It's thrilling entering the chamber called Rebbe Nachman. And again, just to remind everyone the context of our shir, how we're doing this. We're going to be learning about Rebbe Nachman's life together with the teachings that came not necessarily, we're not going to do it chronologically, but everything we're learning about the Rebbe's life, we're going to see in his Torah as well, in his teachings as well. But until we get to actually learning the teachings inside, there's still a lot of background and history that we need to learn about Rebbe Nachman's life. We spent last shir, I think the first shir, speaking about just the genealogy of his parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, mainly his great-grandfather, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, who was already misadering, was already setting the path so that for a certain shidduch to take place, which would eventually bring Rebbe Nachman into the world. And we had that all the different names and everything. We'll come back to a few of the names that we were speaking about, Bifrat Rebbe Nachman's mother and her two brothers. And we saw basically a very, very intimate story about Rebbe Nachman's, what led to his conception and when that took place. And it's very powerful. There's powerful stories that outline how did a neshama like this come down into the world? And what was he busy doing here? That it's all rooted before he even came into the world. What we're going to be seeing today is we're going to be speaking about Rebbe Nachman's birth, his actual birth, and his early years. And a key thing that we're going to be seeing today is the home in which Rebbe Nachman was born. Now, for those of you that have been to Medjugorje before, it's quite thrilling because we actually know, and we've stood on the grounds of where that home was, where that house was. And this is like right outside the Baal Shem Tov's shul. Right outside the shul. Now they have it. When we were going, it wasn't yet, structured. That area wasn't really clear to anybody, but they've made it clear now exactly where it is. Like right before you enter the shul on the left side was the house of the Baal Shem Tov and where Rebbe Nachman himself was born. Now the question is, if Rebbe Nachman had two children, the Baal Shem Tov had two children, and the daughter had 3 children, why is it dafka that Rebbe Nachman's mother was the one to inherit that house, which also plays a role in understanding this picture of Rebbe Nachman's direct line to the Baal Shem Tov. Every detail here is important. And what's thrilling is that we have so many details, it's crazy. We have such a description of what was going on over there. And it's unparalleled really to almost any other story of what we see besides Lubavitch. Lubavitch also is very, very big on details of every single prat of what took place. But what we're going to see today is speaking about the home that he was born in and how that came about to being, and of course his naming. And we'll start Bezrat Hashem also to see what little, I hate to say this, little Nachman, it doesn't feel right to say such words, but little Nachman was like. And we'll do our best. There's a lot to get to. I'm not going to get to everything that was prepared here, but we'll do our best, Bezrat Hashem. So you can pass these pages out. And we'll sing a little bit inside, but I'll be speaking outside as well. These shiurim are very different than what we usually do with just learning a certain text and speaking about it. It's going to be very back and forth in that level, so just kind of stick with me, and we'll do the best that we can. Okay.
you have the book Little Nachman at home? Like the children's book?
Yeah.
We love it.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's great.
Yeah, when you say Little Nachman, that's what I think.
Right. I actually was thinking that as I said that, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I'm hesitant to say such words because there was a scholar that he put out a book and he called it Nachman. And it was just like, it drove me crazy. He put out Nachman. Damn it. So again, the visual here is going to play a role for those that have this visual in their mind of that setting in Medjugorje of the house right outside the shul of the Baal Shem Tov, the home, where what we're seeing is going to be taking place. Does everyone have a copy?
This Rosh Hashem, our next women's trip.
There should be an end of all insanity in that region.
Amen.
Seems like it got crazier this week, so
Yeah.
should be an end to all insanity. Although it started snowing in Medjugorje last night for the first time this winter, so I saw someone posted some footage of snow coming down on the Tzion. Very special. Okay. Which page? Okay. Do you see where I highlighted here an ot bet? Okay, ot bet. What this is all these different pieces that were explaining the biography Chayei Maharan that Reb Nachman put together. These are all the things that basically didn't get into the biography, but they were taken from different sources to complete a picture for us to see what's going on over here. Kayadua. Nolad Rabbeinu bebeis Baal Shem Tov. Rebbe Nachman is born in the home of the Baal Shem Tov. Bait ze kibel Reb Simcha, aviv shel Rabbeinu Zal, nedunya mechamas al tzadkanis ul bas Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. So this home that Rebbe Nachman was born in was basically, how do you say, nedunya? Dowry. That Reb Simcha, Reb Nachman's father, received from Reb Simcha's mother-in-law, who was Rebbe Nachman's grandmother, Udul, who was the daughter of the Baal Shem Tov, and she had it. Shnei habanea hanosafim shel Marat Udul. So the other two sons of Udul, who was Rabbi Reb Baruch Medjugorje, we spoke about, and the Baal Adegel, that means Reb Moshe Chaim Ephraim Sedlikover. These are Rabbi Nachman's two uncles. Why weren't they there? Why didn't they get the house? Nahagu nesiutam beyad rama ish be'iro. They each were Rebbes in their own places. Now, Reb Baruch Medjugorje seems like he was in Medjugorje, but not in the beginning. So he was holding court in other places. Sedlikov was another place where the other uncle was holding shop. Lachen notar habayit birshuta shel Maras Fega. That's why the house remained by Rabbi Nachman's mother. Sibat Hasharat. Now, but let's go back 1 second. But wait a second. The Baal Shem Tov had a son, like we learned last week. Why didn't the house initially go to the son? Why did it go to the daughter? Right? Why didn't it go to Reb Tzvi, the Baal Shem Tov's son? Sibat Hasharat Abayit etzel Maras Udul Dafka Mekubal. So we know that Reb Tzvi ben Baal Shem Tov haya echad hanistarim sheba'olam. We know very little. Even what we know about Reb Tzvi. I have a sefer, Even Yisrael, and it's interesting how a sefer came out based on such little information that we have about Reb Tzvi, the Baal Shem Tov's son. The Baal Shem Tov's son was a big nister. It was a very hidden tzaddik. Imagine being the Baal Shem Tov's son. Good luck. What are you going to do, right? The Baal Shem Tov's son, very nister. We have some stories, some pretty far out stories, but be'etzem, he was very hidden. So he was one of the biggest nistarim sheba olam. And what did he seem to appear to be? Lemare einehem haya socher shvarim belitzorech asakav haya noseh me'ir le'ir. He was a merchant, and he would travel so that he wouldn't draw any attention. It was like Beshita. He didn't know if he needed to be. I don't know if he was a good merchant, bad. I have no idea. I don't know if he liked it or not. But the Baal Shem Tov's son Reb Tzvi was this merchant that would travel from town to town. Lo aval lishe beveis aviv in Medjugorje. He did not want to sit in his father's house in Medjugorje, and there are a number of reasons for this, which we're not going to get into right now. Maybe one year we'll do that. We'll learn that whole sefer, Even Yisrael. It's a crazy sefer, just about the world after the Baal Shem Tov died by the family. It's a very, very interesting sefer. V'hirchik nedod, he traveled very far. Therefore, if he's gone, he's not around. The house stayed by Udul. Kach notar habayit bebalusa shemaras Udul, ve'achar kach horisha lebita maras Fega. And then that house was inherited then to Rebbe Nachman's mother Fega, again because the other her two brothers were holding court in other places. Now, this description is unbelievable. The baby, Rebbe Nachman HaKodesh, comes out into the world. And what's his life like? The first few moments he's in the world, and the first few days and weeks that he's in the world. What was done with him? What was life like? Mesupar, Ech sheyatzar Rabbeinu Zal la'avir ha'olam, the moment he came out to the world, natna lo imo yadav shlosha pa'amim l'serugin, v'kista miyad et rosho v'kova. His mother did negelvasa for him as he came out into the world, and she placed a head covering on him. Uchmochen, kol zman sheikitz bishnato linok, whenever he'd wake up to be nursed, natla et yadav kadin. She always washed him negelvasser every time he woke up. Like when we wake up, and we're supposed to wake up, whenever you wake up, you're supposed to wash your hands. This she did to Rebbe Nachman from his birth. Meaning, Udal, the Masorah from Udal down to Fega, down to Rebbe Nachman, was that the Baal Shem Tov was thinking about this boy, as we learned last week, from the first second. The Baal Shem Tov was thinking about this child, Mamish, from the first second. Why not his older brother, Rebbe Yisrael? We spoke about it a little bit last week. I don't want to get into it right now. But this was already, it wasn't stam. It wasn't stam. And obviously, like we learned last week, how his mother, Fega, what she went through during this pregnancy, her tears and crying by the kever of her grandfather, and probably the kabbalas that she took upon herself with, before this child came into the world, she treated this baby just mashu acher legamer, and something else. V'nikra shmo, and what do they call him? Nachman. Now, as a namesake, remember who he's named after, right? He's named after his grandfather from the other side, the Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, Rebbe Nachman Hordenker. Remember the one that we said last week that he wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael? He kept on asking the Baal Shem Tov to go. Finally, the Baal Shem Tov said to him, okay, go to the mikvah and then come back and we'll talk about it. And that whole vision that he had in the water, the Baal Shem Tov said, what did you see when you toivel? Do you remember this story we did last week? Okay. So his name was Nachman, al Shem Skeno Rebbe Nachman Hordenker. Ubishas Kriyas Hashem, and when they said his name, now his bris is also very interesting. His bris came out on Shabbos Hagadol, 1772. His bris is on Shabbos, which is also in Lostam. Ubishas Kriyas Hashem, Anad Dodo Rebbe Baruch Medjebusher, Rebbe Baruch Medjebusher screamed out, Nachman, al Shem Ze Yenachameinu Mima'aseinu Umi'itzvon Yadeinu. All right, this is a whole shir on its own that I was debating. Do we do a shir just on this? And I'm choosing not to now. Maybe we'll go back to it. Where's this pasuk from where it says Ze Yenachameinu Mima'aseinu Umi'itzvon Yadeinu? Noach, it says by him, when he's born, he will be the one that will now console us. Ze Yenachameinu. He will console us from our actions, Umi'itzvon Yadeinu, and from the sadness of what's come about our actions, our hands. Why did the world need such nechama back then? Why did the world need to be consoled when Noach was born? Well, when you look at the end of Parashat Bereshit, Ribono Shleim lets us know, that's what the Torah is like, Ribono Shleim is letting us know, this world is ma'usalai. This is not bringing me nachas. Those first 10 generations that came into the world, the Ribono Shleim sees such craziness. He has sadness on his heart, like the pasuk says, by his atzev el libo, Hashem says about his own heart, sadness on his heart. And he says, I'm going to destroy the whole world. And like we learned many times, Had Parshat Bereshit ended just with that and not the last pasuk, we'd understand why God. Well, we would have never been here, but we could understand that Hashem said, "Okay, this was a nice attempt, like many worlds before, like the Zohar Kodesh says. This isn't happening either." And then it says, "V'Noach matzachein b'einei Hashem." But there was someone called Noach that came and brought and found favor in the eyes of Hashem. Ze yinachameinu mima'aseinu u'mitzvon yadeinu. The famous question is, if this is the reason, if this is what his namesake is for, why isn't Noach's name Nachman? His name is Noach. You understand the question?
Well, the other way around. Rabbi Nachman could have been called Noach.
Well, no, this is not. Or Rabbi Nachman could have been. You know what? I makabel that. Or Rabbi Nachman could have been called Noach. Meaning, but his grandfather's name was Nachman. Yeah, or his grandfather's name would have been Nachman. I don't know. Rav Nachman. We have time. We have in the Gemara. Rav Nachman. This is an old name. I wonder who the first Nachman was. That'd be interesting. Like the first. I don't know. But the question is, and this is what the whole shir is on, why Dafka is the perush for Noach, not Noach, not just comfort, like rest, peace, tranquility, but it's Dafka this word Nachman. But anyway, his uncle screamed this out at the bris. The Baruch Medjabusher screams this out. Ze yenachamenu. This is going to be a consolation. He quotes the pasuk. This kid is going to be a consolation in Am Yisrael. Now, Yesh Omrim, this is just interesting. Yesh Omrim sheshem mishpachto shel Rabbeinu haya Horedenker. Some say that really the last name of his family was Horedenker. Now, it's not necessarily, most places don't see this, but last names were beginning around then as well. So it's not out of the ordinary that there was a last name. It could very well be by the children of the Alter Rebbe.
After Napoleon.
It's a biduk that time, but even during Napoleon, even right then and there, they started to understand. This is I once saw a whole piece about this. They started to understand the necessity of having last names by the children of the Alter Rebbe. In that line, it started becoming Shneori. That was like a last name, Shneori, on the name of the Alter Zayde, of Reb Shneir Zalman. Reb Nassan, we knew had a last name, Sternhartz. Reb Nassan's right, he's younger than Rebbe Nachman, but last names were already pretty common there. And there was another tzaddik around the same time, that maybe a little bit after, that we know had a last name in Chassidus, which is Friedman. It's a very, very big last name in the world of Chassidus. And Rabinovich is also a very big name from back then, from those times as well. Friedman was Rizhin, the line of Rizhiner. Okay, so after the bris, Achai Simchat Brit Shel Rabbeinu. So the bris, they do the bris. Just imagine this. This is really, for anyone that knows these names, it's fascinating. Achai Simchat Brit Shel Rabbeinu, Nichnasu Achim HaKadoshim, Rabbi Baruch Medjabusher, Ubal Degel Amachane Ephraim. So the two uncles of Rebbe Nachman come to their sister. They come into the room where I'm assuming Fega is nursing Rebbe Nachman. He em Rabbeinu שהייתה אחותם, והייתה כידוע חשובה ביניהם מאוד. They held of Fega to very high esteem. It wasn't this Indian of we're the sons, we have it down. There was a Masoret. We see something very interesting. There's a Masoret from the Baal Shem Tov and his relationship with Udal, that women in the lineage have big Bali Ruach HaKodesh, listen to them, consult with them, have them be part of what's going on. Maybe not on the level of leadership, but they're definitely not, it's not kitchen. It's not just go to the kids in the kitchen. It's bichlal, not the story. We have stories of the Alter Rebbe with his daughter that unfortunately was Nifter, the mother of the Tzemach Tzedek. What was her name? Fried. Not
the mother. No, sorry, the other one who wasn't the.
Who's the one that's buried right next to the Alter Rebbe? Friedka? I think it's another name. It's not. Is it Dvorah Leah?
No. Dvorah Leah gave up her life. That's the mother of the Tzemach Tzedek.
That's what I'm talking about.
She's not buried with the Alter Rebbe. She died before the Alter Rebbe because she gave up her life so that he would live.
So which one was it that she was like like a Rebbe. Yeah? I'm not sure. I'm getting... we'll stick with Breslov today. We'll stick with Breslov. We never do good when we do this, by the way. Whenever we're trying to draw it here, we kind of get stuck. But this is an important nekuda I wanted to give over, is that we see this as like the women, the daughters, the sisters, they were really balat chashivut. Like this is very important. The brothers, Reb Baruch Majabasher, Reb Moshe Chaim Ephraim Sedlikover, they really, really held of Rebbe Nachman's mother Fega. And after the bris, after they have the bris, they come into the room. They held that Rebbe Nachman's mother Mamish had Ruach HaKodesh. And they blessed her. The brothers came to the room to their sister, and they blessed their sister, that she should be zocha to raise this boy for all the good things that should happen to every Jewish kid. Panta el achia Rebbe Baruch. She goes to her brother Rebbe Baruch, and she says, "Ubiksha oto shivarech gam et arach animo shelo yachleku alav." Fascinating. She has a specific bracha that she asks her brother Baruch Mejabasher, give this child a bracha that there shouldn't be machlokas on him. He's 8 days old. And she's saying, give my son a bracha that there shouldn't be machlokas on him. Rabbi Baruch, ze avud. Rabbi Baruch Mejabasher says, that's already lost, meaning, and he's doomed for machlokas. And malasot, like, I don't know if he then continue with the bracha. This is very interesting. Baruch Mejabasher says, that's just in his cards. It's just like what he's doing it's inevitable. Basically,
It's just great. Justice for
fallen. For fallen. It's like, and malasot. Every detail here, what we're sharing, as we'll see later in Rebbe Nachman's life, to understand the machloket on him, we have to see it's all rooted in what happened before, in his conception, the time, his bris. All these details will help me understand, when we open up a Likutei Moharan and learn his Torah, you understand what we're doing. We're trying to seep this in so deeply to connect to the bigger picture and not just, how could he say this about himself? Or how could he act like that? Which you'll ask yourself every time you hear a story about Rebbe Nachman. Because nothing is simple. It's not like, Rebbe Nachman then came to that town and they had a beautiful Shabbos and sang Zmiros for hours and everyone went home happy and inspired. There's no story like that. Everyone always went home like this. Everyone always went home, There's like, the soundtrack of like Shabbos with Rebbe Nachman was either like immense tears, bitter tears, hours of then like climbing mountaintops and speaking to Hashem in your own language, but mainly like, that's really everything. Why? It's all rooted in here. This is not a simple story of a person's life.
In this context, how would you define machlokas? Because that's so big.
Basically having a taina on him and saying, who are you to act this way? Why are you teaching like this? And your Torahs are insanity. More or less.
What were the times like at that time when you say like the Yasber Nechama? Like what was going on then
Where?
in the world?
By Noach?
No.
Oh, by Rebbe Nachman.
Yeah.
Maybe you should ask the historian better, huh?
Poland was literally divided that year, so they lost a lot of their freedoms. Like Russia took a piece, Germany took a Prussia, Austria, Hungary. It's like divided. So changes.
Are you asking about the world or the Jewish world? Oh, the Jewish world. So, I mean, I don't listen. So many of the historians that explain the emergence of Hasidus always attribute the broken Jewish heart to a few things, mainly the Chmielnicki massacres and the pogroms that were nonstop and the aftermath of Shabtai Tzvi and what that did to the world. There are many different things. The Baal Shem Tov was the one to start to crack down that notion of like, there's no inyan lechatchila to be a tzabroch and a yid. There's world, but it was just a continuation, and that's what we're seeing really over here in this shir of like what the Baal Shem Tov, why the Baal Shem Tov came into the world. Now within Chassidus here, Chassidus is not really, besides like, Chassidus didn't really go wild yet in Poland at this time. It begins to emerge over the next like 25 years, really due to the Noam Elimelech's relationship with the Maggid of Mizrich, and a lot of his love and relationship to the Alter Rebbe and the Kedushas Levi and Rebbe Nachman Chernobler. But this is a chiddush. Rebbe Nachman is a chiddush coming into the world. And listen, if Rebbe Baruch Medjabusher thought about his sister that she was Baal Ruach HaKodesh, we could say the same about him as well. Okay, we could say the same thing about him as well. Okay, so now turn the page, more details here, fascinating details about what was taking place as a young child. Today we're just doing the early years, different things, and it's amazing that we have just another inyan about Rebbe Nachman. Rebbe Nachman's memory was freaky. He would remember things and Torahs that he heard at the age of 2, and he would quote them later on in life. His memory was just incredible. Every word he heard seeped deep into. You have people like this, like whether they like it or not. Sometimes it's the most detrimental thing to a person's life that they remember everything. You know anyone like that mamish remembers everything? It's very petrifying being around them. I'll tell you a story. Like I have a good friend that I was with him once when I had another friend with me that kept on bugging me to play one of my own nigunim to teach him, and it wasn't about that night. And I kept on, and my friend, no, and my other friend that wanted to, basically that was going to hear this no nigun, he was talking to somebody else. 2 nights later, the same setting, just in a different place, and my friend again said, "Okay, Rav Shlomo, תנגן את הניגון שלך עכשיו, מי אני?" And I said, no. Then my other friend said, הוא ביקש ממך את זה שלשום בלילה, וגם כן אמרת לו, לא, עכשיו תנגן. זאת אומרת, there are people that retain every single ounce of information of things that are happening around them. You're not even aware of it. By Rebbe Nachman, this was mamish the case, but it was all concealed. When you looked at Rebbe Nachman as a kid, you probably wouldn't think that if you saw him with other people, you'd never think you wouldn't think he's different. And he was beshita acting like that when he was amongst other children. The only thing is, people didn't know that when he wasn't with other children, he wasn't playing in his bedroom with markers or with stickers. There was some crazy things going on from a very, very young age, which is what we're going to be seeing today. שיבח רבנו את עצמו וסיפר שעוד בהיותו ילד קטן, כשהייתה אמו מסרקת אותו, he said when he was a little baby, or a little child and he started having hair, his mother would comb his hair. לא היה בוכה כדרך הנערים, he wouldn't cry like other kids kvetch and cry when the mother goes through their child's hair. כי ידע והבין כבר בקטנותו, he already knew at such a young age, שבזה העולם בהכרח לסבול. This is crazy. He understood already from a young age that this world is not about just smooth sailing. And he wasn't waiting for like career choices when he in his early 20s to discover this. Already from a young age, when he experienced some type of a pain, a physical pain, which is the way that hair functions and how you straighten hair and how mothers do it, that there had to be an element of discomfort. ואין טוב בזה העולם כי אם הסבל. This is very hard to understand for 80-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 20-year-olds, kol sheken 2 or 3-year-olds. That in this world, if you're aware of this and you go through this and you accept it, that is what's called good in the world. Now, this is what he's saying at a young age. Rebbe Nachman has a shift of consciousness at a certain age, a little bit later on. But at a young age, this is where he was holding. Next week, we're going to see a lot of different things that Rebbe Nachman did, probably between the ages of 4 and like 13, 14, where you see this thread of like En tov ba'olam hazeh ela seva, like that's if you can acknowledge and accept that that's what you're here to go through, that's actually, you end up feeling good because you're understanding what this world is all about. That was the younger Rebbe Nachman, right? The same Rebbe Nachman that ends up saying, mitzvah gedola liot b'simcha tamid. That's Rebbe Nachman, you know that. Mitzvah gedola, that's Rebbe Nachman, right? Not his nigun, but that's Rebbe Nachman. Od biyoto Rabbeinu keben 4 shanim, Rebbe Nachman's 4 years old, בעת שאימו הייתה מרדימה אותו, כשהבחין רבנו שהיא נרדמה, היה יורד בלהט ממיטתו, והלך להתפלל על קבר הבעל שם טוב זקנו. I don't know if any of you have or remember when you had 4-year-olds at home, when you tucked them into sleep, did they pretend to go to sleep and then sneak out of the house and go to Har Menuchos? Did they sneak out of bed once you thought, once they were under the assumption that you weren't seeing or you thought they were sleeping, and then go downstairs and open up a Shulchan Aruch?
No, it's very unusual, but it's a different kufa. You can't compare children of today to children then.
I would compare 4-year-olds today to 4-year-olds of then. 4? Yeah. A 4-year-old I'd compare.
You don't think he saw his mother doing that?
What's that?
You don't think he saw his mother doing that? I mean, that's how when she was pregnant, right?
And I was
Like, that
actually
was-
wondering that about the earlier point when he
Yeah.
said, we're meant to suffer.
Right?
Did he hear that from his
Right.
parents? Could be a mimic. Did he learn that from his parents?
It's a very good question. There's no way to know. I mean, if there was a way to know, we would know it. Well, we'll see that a lot of the things that he did hear in those younger years played a very big role in his life. But it's a good question about Dafka, his mother. Did he see his mother going to the Kever the Baal Shem Tov when he was in utero? I don't, I wouldn't put anything past Rebbe Nachman.
No, but she did it back then. It must have been like a connection. Like that it must have been something she would do often. Like that's how she felt connected that way.
Could be, but 4-year-olds that see their right, but 4-year-olds again. Let's stick to the age of 4 here. Okay, what you're speaking about is a little bit older.
The numbers were different, like the ages were different. Like
No. The ages were different 5,000 years ago, not 200 years ago.
2,000 years ago?
No. This is this. Yeah. This is different. I'm talking.
What she's saying is, I've seen your son try to play the guitar a few times.
His name is Nachman,
And his dad plays the guitar. So
Could be. Listen, did he
it
see?
isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, of course not.
This is wonderful. So
This is the highest thing in the world. Yeah. No, we're just trying to figure out like where is this coming from? Listen, there's no doubt in my mind that every single thing that his mother Ba'alas Aruch HaKodesh did before he was born, while she was pregnant, and definitely listen, if she's doing Negel Vaser for him when she comes onto the world, something seeping in, something deep is happening from a very young age, from the moment of conception. It could be that he saw her do these things. I don't know. I'm sure she spoke about her mother, and there's a machlokas whether Udal was still alive or not. The historians are going back and forth between the exact year that she died. So it's not so clear. But from the mother, it could be. It could be.
You said that the house was right near the kever, right?
Relatively close. Yeah. Nachon. It's a 2-minute walk, 3-minute walk.
Who raised her if his mother died?
No, not his mother. I'm talking about Udal was the grandmother. The grandmother. Now, here's a very important piece, but it's important for us to understand this. Chassidim, by that time, were already living in other places. Medjugorje was not necessarily the headquarters of where Chassidim were. Really, from the time of after the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid is setting up shop in Mizrich. All the other tzaddikim, there's different courts, different places. However, they would always come back to Medjugorje and come to that house, fabreng, reminisce. Remember, the Baal Shem Tov passes away in 1760, 12 years before Rebbe Nachman's born. So There were tons of them that were Kli Rishon. They were basically like, Kli Rishon means they were there. They were giving over the stories. They would talk about it, and the little infant in the room overheard everything. Everything. And this plays a big role in Rebbe Nachman's Torah behind Sipurei Ma'asiyot. Right? Rebbe Nachman's stories is a very big function of Avodat Hashem. It's not stam. It's not like, oh, this is cute to soften the heart. This is a strong, important piece of Avodat Hashem. But Rebbe Nachman, as a young kid, starts to get a little, not kanoi, but he's like, I want to be part of this too. Now listen to this story. This is a crazy story. A few of the Chassidim that were there, spending time in Medjugorje, they were like, you know what? We want to go linsua l'Rav Baal Todos Yaakov Yosef. I didn't even know he was still alive then. They wanted to go and meet one of the Baal Shem Tov's top students, who was the first Hasidic Sefer was his, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef from Polnoi. We were zochet to be there in one of the trips where he's buried. It's not next door to Medjugorje. It's a schlep. They wanted to go to Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Hakon, as you see inside. Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Hakon, Migdoli Talmidei Baal Shem Tov HaKodosh, ben lemishpachat Rabbanim miyucheset, and the head, the Av Beis Din Polnoi, and his Svarim are Todos Yaakov Yosef, Ben Parat Yosef, Tzafnas Paneach, Ktonet Pasim, all these Svarim that he has, and they want to go. Rabbi Nachman's 4 years old, and he's hearing that they're saying, okay, let's go to the. He was very old back then, and he died shortly after this story, actually. Ratzah Rabbeinu Shayaz Yelet Katan Keben 4 or 5 shanim. He's 4 or 5 years old. Gam linsua imahem, ve'hiftzir bahem shikhu imam. He demanded, you take me with you. Ubioto Yelet Katan lo avu lekochto. He's a little kid. They didn't want to schlep a little kid on the way with him. They weren't. These were not his uncles. Even though he was the Baal Shem Tov's great-grandson, there's a makesher. We're going to schlep a 5-year-old with us to go into the Toldos Yaakov Yosef. K'shevchim Rabbeinu b'siruvam, he sees that they're saying no. Halach v'ne'emad lifnei galgalei Merkava. He basically sets up shop by the wheels of the chariot, and he's saying, I'm not moving here. He puts his legs. One version is like he actually put his legs in the wheel of the chariot, and we see here a midah of akshanus, crazy akshanut. Now, akshanut, persistence and stubbornness, also is a Torah in Likutei Moharan that we should be zochet to learn. When to have the midah of akshanut, and when it's very bad to have the midah of akshanut. Rebbe Nachman, his students, it's very interesting. The students would come to Rebbe Nachman later in the years, and they would ask him questions all the time. Similar to my Rosh Yeshiva of Bravender, whenever we'd come to him with questions till today, should have refuah shlema, should feel good. It drove me nuts. He'd never give me answers. He would discuss it until I realized after a few years, he's really, really trying to get me to answer my question. That's what he's really, because they weren't like halachic shaylas of is this mutter or not? The questions of should I? The question of should I? By Rebbe Nachman's students, this would happen all the time. They'd come, they'd ask him all these questions, and he would say stories, he would ask them a question back on his question, all these things would take place. Then, if he saw they're being persistent, then Rebbe Nachman would say after hours, sometimes days, he's like, oh, well, that's what you should really do. Rebbe Nachman took place in his life when Rebbe Nachman was offered a certain job somewhere to be a Rav. The story is mamash similar over there. So the midah of akshanut, Rebbe Nachman, it's a very specific mahalach in Avodat Hashem that Breslevers are very makbidan to that we'll learn inside through Likutei Moharan. But at the age of 5, he had akshanut, he had stubbornness, and he was persistent. So he sticks his legs in the chariot. He sits down before it, so that they can't go. So one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, Rebbe Chaim Krasner, was there. He was, as you see here, was a Talmid of the Baal Shem Tov and his friend of Reb Pinchas of Koritzer. Reb Chaim Krasner, this tzaddik sees the akshanas, the stubbornness of this kid. Et akshanuto agdola, tafsa biyado achat, Ve'elau lemerkava ve'nasai mahem yachad. He didn't ask the other chavra, this Reb Chaim Krasner. They said, this kid's not going anywhere. And if he's not going anywhere, we're not going anywhere. So he chaps him, puts him on the chariot, and they start going. Amar Rabbeinu b'sipro zot, and Rebbe Nachman told the story. He said, Machzik ani lo tova Reb Chaim Krasner. I'm in tremendous state of gratitude and debt to this Reb Chaim Krasner who schlepped me there as a little kid. Why? Ki al yado ra'a v'kibel et pnei harav ba'al hatodos. Because through him, he actually was zocheh to see a Talmud of his great-grandfather. I don't know if he saw any of the other first-generation Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov. This was the only one that he actually ended up seeing. Ekev Maaseh, after this, basically, as a result of this old Maaseh, Hitbater Reb Chaim Kavur Shanim Klape Rabbeinu Zal. Reb Chaim Krasner said years later about Rabbeinu Zal, about Rebbe Nachman, את העקשנות הקדושה ראו עליו כבר מימי יניקתו. We see his akshanas even from his early days. פעם ביות רבנו תינוק, one time Rebbe Nachman was a baby, נסעה אם רבנו מביתה, Fagel had to leave her house, וביקשה מהרב הצדיק, רב חיים קרסנר, שישגיח עליו. She asked רב חיים קרסנר to babysit. כשחזרה, אמר לה רב חיים, הנך יכולה לתאר לעצמך ששמרתי עליו היטב. It's not babysit for a few hours. When someone has to go and do an errand, it would be like 3 days. You understand? So he said, you could just imagine, I took very good care of him, עד שלא קמתי בחצות לערוך את התיקון כהרגלי, כדי שלא יתעורר הילד. I was so, and this says a lot actually about this dafka, this personality of Chaim Krasner, saying I didn't usually every single night I'd get up for Tikkun Chatzos. That's a basic that every tzaddik of that door, and it's less common today, but that's a very, very big thing that the tzaddikim would get up in the middle of the night to do Tikkun Chatzos. But because he was choshesh that possibly he would be waking up Rebbe Nachman by making, there was a very, if you remember the visual, it's a very small house. The house was like half of this room, the whole house. Maybe half of this room. A tiny house. He had a chashash that by waking up and by doing something, he would wake up Rebbe Nachman. He couldn't live with himself by doing this. So we see here, this is a different story. This is a different story. It's a different childhood. Now in Shivchei Haran, the book Shivchei Haran, which is a very important book that speaks about the praises of Rebbe Nachman. The reason we have so many of these stories about praises of Rebbe Nachman as a young child, as you see, part of it is documentation that came from the outside, but a huge chunk of it is stuff that Rebbe Nachman told about himself to his students. Now you could sit back and wonder, that's pretty Baal Gaivadik. And that's something we spoke about last week. That there are a lot of statements Rebbe Nachman said about himself that it really makes you struggle. To say about yourself, Chidush kamoni lo haya me'olam, there was never a greater chidush than me in the world. That's a very troubling statement to the mind and heart of the person who wants to receive Torah from a source of humility. If you say about yourself, imagine I go up this Shabbos in the shul, give a drasha, and I stand up and say, I want you to know that I realized this week there are things that I look at everyone, there's only I can do in this world. And I'm so happy that you came to receive from me, because you know where the truth is, right? Now, I wonder over the years when Rebbe Nachman would say these things in front of the students, I wonder if we don't have that much documentation about those that were so bothered and they said, I got to get out of here. It seems that there was a real sense of being in the presence of something that's way bigger than anything they were ever used to and ever heard of. And what we have is a bunch of different stories that Rebbe Nassan heard directly from Rebbe Nachman about his childhood. And before I share a few more, I just want to say one of them to explain why we know about all these things. Rebbe Nachman is not just, when he talks about his youth, he's not just telling us about the amazing things that happened to him and the great things that he did. He also speaks about all the moments as a child that he had in life that he wanted to give up. from the time he was a kid. He would be so high, and then he'd have these yeridot. He would have the downfall, the post-Ukraine, Poland trips. So I hope you don't have it, but you know what I mean. You can go up, and then and that's what Rebbe Nachman in one of his teachings, Torah Vav, which we need to spend 8 months on just for Torah Vav, at least, if we ever have the chutzpah to do it, is that Rebbe Nachman says a person has to have Bekius, Beratza, Ubeshov. A person has to learn how to walk. A person has to learn how to fall, because you will fall. And you also have to learn how to get up. Rebbe Nachman gives us the whole story. He doesn't just give us the tzaddikim stories. He also tells us the times that he couldn't open up the Gemara because he had a chasima. He had some kind of a blockage. He couldn't get past it. We have this from him as well. We have stories of him describing how he didn't rely on his yichus for nothing. For nothing. He would remind his students all the time, I know that you all know I'm the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, but that has nothing to do with anything that I've achieved in this world. You could look at that story on the one hand as gaiva, or you could understand what the tzaddik is telling you, really. And the tzaddik is telling you something much deeper than that. The tzaddik is telling you, you can do it too. Because you could sit there and be like, well, my great-grandfather's not the Baal Shem Tov. You know how many times people have come to me. This has happened a lot. I'm saying a very, it's not a Gaivadik story, especially after what I just said, you'll understand. I had a few friends that have told me so many times, listen, you're able to do what you do because, let's face it, you grew up in a stable home. I didn't. My parents didn't have the Shabbos table you had. On the one hand, am I going to tell them, no, it had nothing to do. But that's not the point. But people generally always look at someone else. And yesterday I was learning, and Rabbi Yaakov Meir Shechter says that when you look at someone else, you end up, whatever you achieve, just in comparison to that someone else, it's not your chelik. And that which was your chelik, you said, I'm not shaykh to it either. Rebbe Nachman was trying to emphasize the inyan of, yes, it's true. My mother washed my hands from the time all those things are true. And it's, of course, part of my bigger story. But about himself, he said, it had nothing to do, it didn't play any role in what I came and brought down into the world, because I'm a complete and total chiddush. Rebbe Nachman once said about himself, I have nothing to do in this Gilgul. Like we learned last week, how Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, remember we learned Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and the Ima and Rachel and Leah, and so Rivka, Rachel and Leah, how they fought for this neshama to come down into the world, because this neshama called Rebbe Nachman Mebreslov had nothing to do in this world, mitzad his tikkun. It was, we don't know, that's not the way we view life. We view life, everyone came down here to fix something. Rebbe Nachman said about himself, I actually don't have anything here to fix. My inyan here is mashu acher legamre. It's not his own thing. But until he realized that, the pain and stuff he put himself through from a young age is really, really wild stuff. Yeah, and I didn't want to. We could learn all this inside, or I could just share with you. I realized I know what's going to happen if I don't have gvulot with this shiurim. We're gonna learn this just. And you probably wouldn't have a problem with it actually, as I'm saying this, but we'll never get to the Torahs. It'll just be stories all day long. So I'm just going to share with you one or two nekudot here that Rebbe Nachman will learn more about next week, about the stuff that he fought through, taivas that he mamish fought through until he broke them. And one of them, big one, is eating. From a young age, Rebbe Nachman realizes, he senses, this little satan here, this gets a lot of people in trouble. The whole notion of machal, of eating. Now, why would he think that? Well, what's the primordial sin? Right? So, but he also sees, I'm sure, Hasidim already back then weren't exactly in shape if they're sitting around for bringing a lot and, drinking mashke and eating. Rebbe Nachman, we know his physique he was very, very frail, very frail. He had scruffy red beard and like payas, but not much more than that. But though he was very, very thin, he was very frail because he wasn't healthy. The descriptions of even the bloodstains on his beard through the coughing that was a result of the tuberculosis. So he himself was not a healthy person, but Rebbe Nachman saw the inyan of breaking taivas achila already at a young age, which we'll talk about. Like I said, next week we're going to see a lot of different things that he was working through from a young age. But one of the things that made him a little bit different than other kids in the class was that when he was sitting cheder, he had a pasuk that was right in front of him all the time. He says about himself, and the pasuk was Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid, Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. That I have to constantly have the Ribono Shalom, Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, in front of me always, always. In different worlds of Hasidic meditations based on Hasidus, there's a lot, and not just in Hasidus, also the Baalei Kabbalah, Abulafia. There's all these methodologies that you do with the Yud Kei Vav Kei. If I'm supposed to have Hashem's name in front of me, how do you do this? You see that the name of Hashem and all these different Tzerufim sometimes is by the seat of Tzaddikim, by Rebbe Weinberger. He has one of those right in front of him. At least he did when I was younger, and I used to see it there. But Rebbe Nachman is sitting there in Cheder as a little kid, and he has Shivisi Hashem, and he's sitting in class. And what would happen was that the Rebbe would ask him, okay, Nachman, where are we holding? But he wasn't paying attention at all to what was going on in class, because he was mamish focusing on Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. He'd even get slapped from the Rebbe, because what are you going to explain to the Rebbe when you're 5-6 years old? I'm so sorry, but Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, that's just all I got right now. And the other kid stuff, it's crazy. Completely misunderstood. But his machshava was so rooted in simple things that he learned that he didn't think were nice ideas. He understood that they must be implemented. The moment that he heard it, he felt that it must be implemented. He'd also, when he was a younger kid, we'll talk about his learning schedule, his learning routine. So his parents would pay him a lamed to learn with him privately. Somehow, he was able to double the salary of the melamed from his own pocket, which, again, how a little kid has money, I have no idea. He figured out a way somehow. And he paid privately to his own melamed to learn with him double time. Just a very cute story is that. This happened to Reb Shlomo also, is that the Karlbach family, when they were living in Baden-Baden, in the suburb of Vienna, they were an illustrious family. The father was a big Rav and head of a big region there, and they had a big house. A friend of mine, actually, some of you remember. Do you remember Scott? You know Scott Rosenberg? Do you remember him? He used to come to the shul, big glasses, very precious, diehard Shlomo Chassid. He traveled recently to Austria, and he found that house, and that's the house where the story of Moshe Good Shabbos took place, and he sent me a video of him crying on the doorsteps leading up to the Karabach home of his singing Good Shabbos, Good Shabbos. In that house, we have a lot of stories of what took place there. But one of the things that happened is that the Melamed lived on the bottom floor, and the twin boys, Reb Shlomo and Reb Eli Chaim, lived on the top floor. And the same thing happened is that after his parents would put him to sleep, he snuck out of his bed and then continued to learn throughout the night with the Melamed, to go through Gemara, to learn much more Shas as a young child as well. So that story really, as I was learning it, I was like, that's right in front of me. And these, again, a typical thing that a 5-year-old does. I don't know if our children pay from their own money extra hours, extra money to tutors that we get them to make sure we really get it. So have it happened to you that kids come to you and pay you double with their parents? No, not yet. Not yet. Okay, I want to stop here because there are a lot more things that I want to learn it in a certain way to emphasize its importance, to pave the way for us to then learn Likutei Moharan. But what we're going to be continuing next week is also a bunch of things that were taking place at a very young age. So what we see today over here is basically from the time that he comes into this world, we're dealing with something else. we see the mother's kpeda on taking care of this baby, the fact that he was zochet to see the face and remember Torahs that he heard from the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, which he quoted later in life, which is just astonishing. The fact that the brothers believed that the mother is Ruach HaKodesh, and that the uncles also knew that it's Fafalin. This kid's going to have machlokas on him later in life. And how when he would read a pasuk, he took it for real. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi zamid. I have to have Hashem in front of me at every given second. How do you start doing that? Well, what's in front of me at every given second? What do I see? What do I see? And Bezrat Hashem, we'll continue this journey and hopefully begin to learn inside, hopefully in like 2 or 3 weeks. Okay? All right, Yeshua Koach.